Hello. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the launch event for the Warwick People's Inquiry into Climate Change. First, a few housekeeping notes. We don't expect any fire alarm tests tonight, so if you hear one, it's probably in your own home, and you should act accordingly. You would know by now where your toilets are and where you can find your refreshments, probably in your kitchens. So again, help yourselves to those. Please do keep yourselves mute, your microphones mute. This will help our internet going strong and will allow us to have the recording, which is on now, to have no background noises. Please stay healthy and remember to drink enough liquids of your choice. Change position occasionally and give yourself a good stretch now and again. From time to time, do change position of your eyes as well, avert them from your screen. This will all help you stay more alert and healthier tonight. And in the break, you might want to go for a short walk if you can. The aims of tonight's meeting are to increase your understanding of the People's Inquiry process, to share our recommendations, which we've worked out throughout the last 3 months, and of course, discuss how we all can contribute to implementing our recommendations. We hope you will stay with us for the whole duration of 2 hours, and you will hear how our 30-strong cohort was recruited 4 months ago, who we are and some of our personal stories. We will then share how the inquiry has worked, the experts we listened to, and the topics we identified as key to climate change. We then tell you how we focused on them and how we worked collaboratively to provide you with the recommendations. We will have a 15-minute break at about 6:40, and then we'll work in small groups to share our thoughts and ideas in detail. But I will explain how it works a bit later. We should finish by 7:50. So if you do order a takeaway or if your partner is slaving over your dinner in your kitchen, do let them know. Throughout the presentation, you will see a number of beautiful images of our very own Warwick district, and all of them have been provided by the inquiry members. So I hope you will appreciate this creative side to our panel. May I now read you a paragraph from a book called The Humans by Matt Haig, just to set the tone. It is an alien addressing his fellow alien residents. I know that some of you reading this are convinced that humans are a myth. But I'm here to state that they do actually exist. For those of you who don't know, a human is a real bipedal life form of middle-range intelligence, living a largely deluded existence on a small, waterlogged planet in a very lonely corner of the universe. Let's not forget the things they do that make themselves happy, yet that they actually make them miserable. This is an infinite list. It includes shopping, watching TV, taking the better job, buying the bigger house, writing a semi-autobiographical novel, educating their young, and etc., etc., etc. It's all very amusing in a painful kind of way. But I have discovered human poetry while on Earth. One of these poets, the very best one, her name is Emily Dickinson, said so: I dwell in possibility. So let us humor ourselves and do the same. Let us open our minds entirely. For what you're about to read will need every prejudice you may have to stand aside in the name of understanding. So, ladies and gentlemen, may I invite you tonight to humor ourselves and open our minds entirely, put our prejudices to one side, and listen to what the Warwick People's Inquiry has come up with after having worked together for over 10 weeks. Without further ado, may I give a word to the representative of the Warwick District Council, Councillor Alan Reid. Alan, floor is yours.
Good evening, everybody. I'm not Councillor Alan Reid. Councillor Reid, I believe, isn't on the call. He sends his apologies. He had to take a family member into hospital today, so he's asked me to stand in at the last minute for him. So just to introduce myself, I'm Dave Barber. I'm Warwick District Council's Programme Director for Climate Change. It's really great to see so many familiar names and faces in the meeting tonight from our local communities. One of the things that I just want to say by way of introduction is just to explain why Warwick District Council wanted to organise a people's inquiry, and then to say something about what the council has committed to do with the outcomes of the inquiry, so the recommendations that you'll be hearing this evening. And I also particularly wanted to say thank you to a number of people, because I know a lot of people have worked really, really hard to make this happen on behalf of us as a council, on behalf of us as a community. So I'll start with my thanks. I particularly want to say thank you to all of the inquiry members. We'll be meeting many of them this evening. And I've been fortunate enough to have a preview of this when the inquiry members did a launch to Warwick District Councillors last week. And I know we're in for a real treat this evening in hearing their stories and in hearing about their recommendations as well. So thank you to the inquiry members. You're the people that have really made this happen. So I'm very grateful to you. Thank you as well to the facilitators from Shared Future, very, very professional organisation who've done a great job in ensuring that the whole process the inquiry members have gone through is independent and balanced and fair, and hopefully will give us a set of recommendations that we can all draw on and place a lot of emphasis on. So thank you to them too. And my final thanks goes to a number of local people who represent businesses and local community groups and parish councils and so on, who formed an oversight panel, so that who really provided the support and advice to the facilitators to enable the process to reflect the local population and local circumstances. So thank you again to everybody who took part in the oversight panel, and I know there are a number of people who are on the in the meeting this evening who took part in that. So a lot of people have made this happen, but the council particularly were keen to do this because a people's inquiry was seen as a way of helping us understand what local people really think about the climate emergency and what local people think we ought to be doing. Really important in us as an organisation when we're thinking about all of the actions and the interventions that we need to make to address the climate emergency, that we understand what our local residents are thinking, feeling, and indeed recommending that we do. And if we don't get it right from the perspective of our local population, then we won't get it right at all, and we won't make the progress we need to. So that's why we set up an inquiry. And I think it was important, and Alan Reid would say this if he was here, and he certainly said it last week. It's really important that in setting up this inquiry that we as a council make a commitment to take the recommendations that are made this evening fully into account in preparing our plans to address the climate emergency. And by that, we mean that we will take on board all of the recommendations wherever we can. And wherever we can't take on board the recommendations, we're committed to giving a full and clear explanation as to why we can't. And I think the final thing to say is that the recommendations aren't just recommendations for Warwick District Council, they're recommendations for our partners, so other local authorities, other organisations, other institutions in the district. They're recommendations for businesses in the district, and they're recommendations for our communities and for our residents as well. So this is not something that Warwick District Council can address on its own, and it's one of the reasons why I think it's particularly important that local people have an opportunity to hear direct from the people that have taken part in the People's Inquiry. And I think that's probably all I want to say by way of introduction.
Thanks a lot, Dave. Hi, everybody. My name's Pete Bryant. I'm from Shared Future. I'm one of the facilitators team from Shared Future. So we're a not-for-profit organisation that was commissioned by the District Council to run the People's Inquiry. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how we recruited people. So part of the idea of running a process like this is the idea that we try to choose a mini version of the wider population. Some people call these things mini publics. So our 30 people that we selected are almost like a mini version of the Warwick district. So the way that we did this was we sent out 5,000 letters through an organisation called the Sortition Foundation, who are an independent charity, to randomly selected addresses from the Royal Mail across the Warwick district. We had over 500 responses, so over 500 people registered. You can see the letter that was sent out and the envelope it came in and the invitation card there on your screen. So what we then did with the 500, the Sortition Foundation put all those 500 addresses and contact details into their computer, and their computer then selected 30 people that reflect the diversity of the local population. So that means that the group of 30 that took part in the process have the same percentages as the local population in terms of gender, in terms of age, in terms of ethnicity, in terms of disability, in terms of geography, and in terms of an indicator of the level of deprivation of a community, which is called an indices of multiple deprivation. So we also made sure that the group had a diversity in terms of attitude to climate change. So we asked everybody when they registered, how concerned, if at all, are you about climate change? Either very concerned, a little concerned, not very concerned, or not at all concerned. So the makeup of the population reflected that diversity of answers to that question as well. So that wonderfully impressive set of pie charts on the screen that you probably can't read shows the difference between what we were trying to recruit and the numbers that we recruited, which were on the right in terms of all those characteristics like gender, age, ethnicity, disability, etc. So all this information will be in the final report, which we'll send out to you within the next few weeks. So our job was to support the participants to make sure everybody had a fair say. And we had one session after the recommendations had been written, where we talked with the group about who would like to be involved in organising tonight's launch event. So people volunteered for different roles, and they've gone ahead and gone off and taken on these roles. I hope you enjoy the launch. Thanks, guys.
Hello, I'm Christina, member of the inquiry. And the question we were trying to find an answer to throughout this whole process was, what do we need to do in the Warwick district to help address climate change by 2030? We will now hear some personal stories from the inquiry members, and for that I will hand over to Jenny.
Thanks, Christina. Just before Jenny starts, I'm just going to stop sharing the screen so you can see the people talking about their stories, just so that nobody freaks out when everything changes.
My name's Jenny, and I live in Lapworth beside the Stratford Canal. Until recently, I ran my own company. I've subsequently taken on various voluntary roles, including helping Vassar Community Transport with their inquiries and work with a local charity which funds folk in need with accommodation, etc. I've been surprised at the absence of concern from local people I've spoken with about climate change in the inquiry. I reckon a maximum of 10% have shown a glimmer of interest, which is not good. As Jane Goodall wrote, each of us matters and we can make a difference. The letter from Warwick District Council inviting me to be considered to join the jury arrived, and I thought, no. The letter was put to one side. Then I thought, I could do this. and replied not thinking that I would be taking part, but that I could. Lockdown has changed our lives big time, perhaps leading us to think again about what is important. I've not a single regret in getting involved with this inquiry, a big commitment in time and effort, but making a difference is important to me, my children and my grandchildren. Let's hope we do. And now I hand over to Jill.
Thank you, Jenny. Good evening, everybody. I'm Jill Shaw, and I've lived in Warwickshire for many years. I'm retired now, and my career was as an advisory teacher for primary education with special needs. I won't be around in 20 years' time, but I have grandchildren and am concerned for the future of the planet. During the last few years, my husband and I have changed some of the ways we live, altering our gardening habits to be more eco-friendly, making changes to our diet, and reducing household waste to a minimum, etc., etc. Like to be involved in the People's Inquiry, I said yes, in the hope that together we could support the Warwick District Council's plans to reduce carbon emissions in this area. It has indeed been a very interesting and inspiring process, meeting regularly with experts, district councillors and local people, all with the aim of addressing climate change by 2030. These weekly meetings have highlighted the need in the future for coordinated and collaborative communication between the Warwick District Council and the general public. This process has also further underlined my belief that every individual now has a part to play. I'd like to hand over now to Ignati, please.
Thank you, Jill. My name is Ignati Diakov-Richmond. I live in Leamington. I'm a life coach and an author. My story will start on a lovely warm day in June 2015. Not even a cloud in the sky, and everyone was wearing their lightest t-shirts, shirts, blouses and dresses. And me too. I was just in a shirt and a pair of jeans. Casual, relaxed, and feeling very, very fresh. I was sitting on a chair with my laptop on my lap. I was rereading the final draft of my third book. It was a glorious summer day, and I felt extremely energized. I had had a very productive morning. Almost the whole draft of my book had been proofread. I had had a very good and brisk walk. And after finishing work on my book, I was heading to have a delicious sandwich in the company of my business associate. I felt great, and I worked really hard. I should have mentioned that the chair I was sitting on was in the hospital waiting area. Mr. Diakov, good afternoon. I heard and looked up from my laptop. My name is Mr. Cascarini. I'm a consultant here. In front of me, a doctor was standing, looking as if surprised at myself and at my laptop. I wasn't quite sure back then why he'd be surprised. I closed the lid of my laptop and followed him into his office. 2 minutes later, I heard the words cancer, aggressive tongue cancer. This episode started an entirely new chapter in my life. Chapter which, after 3 surgeries and 45 rounds of radiotherapy, saw me on the journey to explore health. It was an actual physical journey as I traveled extensively around this country and the world, but also mental journey, figuring out what each one of us can do to stay healthy, physically and mentally. This journey, as far as Irrawaddy River in Myanmar, and as close as the Leamington Library, has led me to realize a very fragile, but very direct connection between our human health and planetary health. And this is what has brought me here tonight. And I will pass to Phil now.
Thanks, Ignati. Hi, everyone. My name's Phil. I was born in Warwick and I've lived here all my life. For 40 years, I worked for 2 large automotive manufacturing companies based in the area. And my wife and I have raised 2 children here. I applied to be on the inquiry because I thought it would be interesting to learn more about the subject, and also a chance to share views and ideas, sometimes with people perhaps not from the same starting point as yourself. My starting point when it comes to climate change is that we have a joint responsibility to pass the planet on to future generations in good shape. When it comes to the risks of global warming, personally, I'm convinced when you look at a picture of Earth from space and you see the tiny little band of blue atmosphere around it and how thin it is, and then you read about the huge amount of greenhouse gases that we're pumping out every year, it seems logical to me that that must have a significant effect, and most scientists seem to be warning us of that. Where I'm more on the fence is when I personally try to decide whether I'm an optimist or a pessimist that the human race will quickly enough make the scale of changes needed to turn things around. I think I've become a little bit more optimistic during the course of the inquiry. But whatever, I really do hope that the UK and in particular our district can play our part and set a good example. Thank you, and I'll hand over to Louise.
Thanks, Phil. Hi, I'm Louise. I live in the centre of Warwick. I run food manufacturing plants in the UK, and I've done so in New Zealand as well. I wouldn't have considered myself as a green person. You know, I live in an old house. I drive a four-wheel drive. I never get on a bus. I never ride a bike. But I thought it was important to have a say in terms of the other side of the fence, so that we didn't get things imposed on us that wouldn't quite fit in with the Warwick environment. So that's why I put myself forward for it. Also very interested to see what the council were going to do to implement, and wanted to make sure that the public had a say so that it didn't go on levies onto our council tax. So that's why I joined. It's been interesting, lots of learnings, nice to hear other people's sides of the fence. So I will now hand over to Harry. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Harry, and I was born in Walford Hospital, Leamington Spa, 70 years ago. My childhood was spent outdoors, enjoying playing in the fields, paddling in the brook and fishing. Winters were cold with snow every year. However, schools stayed open, and if the heating wasn't on, we did lessons in our coats. Food came from the local stores, bakers, meat from the butchers and bread from the bakery. We didn't have fridges, only a marble slab in the larder. I still go fishing and run coaching courses on Kingfisher Pool for children, help out on the local farm. However, things have changed in the last 2 years. Wheat seeds rotted in the ground, and only 100 acres of 1,200 acres produce wheat because of waterlogging. In 2019, the crop rotted in the ground again after 4 days underwater. It cost £80,000 to plant and harvest 1,200 acres of wheat. You might as well put that money on a horse. Crops across the UK are down 6 million tonnes in 2020. The one good thing is that vegetable crops were up 6.2%. The seasons can't be guaranteed anymore for farmers. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Harry. Thank you, everyone, for sharing your stories. And we will now hear about what happened in the sessions. So over to Archie, who will explain what happened in session 1.
Hi, everyone. I'm Archie. And in the first session, 30 residents of the Warwick district joined the first session on Thursday, the 12th of November, and met each other and the facilitators for the first time. The facilitators introduced themselves and explained how everything would work in the sessions, including an explanation about the commentator sessions and how we will be working together towards our recommendations. We talked in large and small groups through the session to get to know each other, agree how to work together on Zoom, and we heard from the Warwick District Council about why we had all been brought together to work on this inquiry. After we had heard all the background, we took part in the exercise to think about our vision of the future and what we would like our area to be like in 20 years' time. Then we spent some time together in small groups sharing our visions and getting to know each other's viewpoints. I'll now hand over to Ross.
Hi everyone, I'm Ross. So, the commentators. Over the course of the 10 sessions of the People's Inquiry, we had a selection of commentators who all had a specific background or area of expertise. The commentators were selected by an oversight panel who made sure the process was fair and unbiased. The panel was made up of a range of stakeholders, including the Warwick District Council, Warwick University, Leamington Chamber of Trade, Extinction Rebellion, and others. Each commentator gave a short, timed presentation on their topic area with the purpose of informing the inquiry of the information required to help answer our question. As the presentations contained topic-specific jargon, which in most cases was unfamiliar to people, each inquiry member had a red card they could hold up to stop the presentation and have the commentator explain to them the meaning of their jargon. This helped translate their often very specialised information into layman's terms for the inquiry. After each commentator had given their presentation, the inquiry would then splinter off into small groups to discuss what they had just heard and formulate some questions for the commentators to help dive deeper into the topic. We would then have a broad question and answer session with all of the commentators to answer the group's questions. After a break, we then went back into smaller groups with a commentator or two in each group so as to have another Q&A session, but commentator specific. So who were our commentators? The first 3 sessions of the inquiry focused on giving us introductory information to the inquiry itself, an introduction to what climate change is and the impacts of climate change on the planet, as well as specifically the impacts that Warwick District could expect. This information was provided to us by commentators from Warwick District Council, universities, an environmental consultancy, and a local healthcare practitioner. After our first 3 sessions, we then went away to discuss what topics we'd like to delve deeper into going forward. In session 5, we looked in detail at the issue of transport and had commentators from universities, Warwickshire County Council, the local Chamber of Commerce, and Stagecoach Midlands. In session 6, we looked at housing with commentators from local eco-friendly house builder Green Core Construction, non-profit organisations, the National Energy Foundation and Act on Energy, and several representatives from Warwick District Council. And in session 8, we looked at waste/recycling, finance, and an integrated approach. This session had commentators from national charity WRAP, local charity Action 21, public body local partnerships, universities, and Warwick District Council. And I'm now handing over to Alice.
Hi, I'm Alice. The way we chose our topics that we had our commentators on was in part set out for the first 3 sessions by the People's Inquiry, the Council and our facilitators. But after those first 3 sessions, we had to choose the topics that were of interest to us as a group. We needed to choose these topics we most wanted to learn more about, as we'd need further expert advice and opinion in order to help us write our recommendations. So based on the information that we'd been presented with by our first set of experts, we discussed in groups what we felt was most important for the inquiry to discuss further. And largely based on the fact that we were told that the biggest carbon emitters in the county were housing and transport, these were voted through as our first 2 main areas of concern, and therefore we had those commentators give us those next 2 sessions on those topics. It was not as clear which other areas were highest on our agenda, and so we agreed to vote again after the Christmas break. This gave us all a chance to reflect on the information that we'd already been given, and it also gave us time to do our own research and to review what we'd already covered. Many of us came back in the new year with our own research, ideas and opinions on the topics we needed to choose from. We discussed these in small groups and then we voted again. The topics we chose were finance, integrated approach and waste and recycling. And therefore we had the more expert advice and commentators presenting ideas and information to us as a group over the next 3 weeks, and allowing us to gain a deeper understanding of those areas before writing our recommendations. And I pass over to Christina.
Hello, everyone. So throughout the process, we were looking in various small groups during the stages of our recommendations. In these randomly allocated small groups, we brainstormed about what changes we thought were important in order to address climate change locally, mostly based on what we had heard from our speakers. In the last stages, we selected our favorite ideas, made some drafts, reflected on them, and discussed their pros and cons. We also had some thought-provoking exercises like the money tree exercise, where we were trying to identify the causes of climate change and the obstacles we faced and the obstacles we needed to overcome in order to address those problems. With the help of our facilitators, we identified many areas and used them to build up a tree from the roots up to the branches. So after these exercises and many small group discussions, we then made a final draft of our recommendations, which we discussed over and over many times in different small groups. And then we refined them even further to finally come up with the very final list of recommendations that you will be able to hear about today. I will now hand over to Jenny and Paul to read out our statement.
The following statement was written by a group of inquiry members and then edited and discussed by the rest of the group. 27 out of 30 inquiry members voted on the recommendations. 21 strongly supported the statement, 3 supported the statement, 2 people voted neither to support nor oppose, and 1 strongly opposed the statement. Our statement to you. We are a group of ordinary people from the Warwick district. We are a diverse group who were randomly selected to join this climate change inquiry. We have different viewpoints, but have reached a shared understanding. We now recognise we are in a climate emergency. We must act now all together and with urgency. Through our conversations with experts and with each other, we have come to recognise the importance of immediate action. We are not experts, and we recognise that it may not be 100% possible to implement all our recommendations immediately. However, we ask all local organisations and institutions, including Warwick District Council, to take our recommendations as a mandate to be as ambitious as you can within the areas we have highlighted in responding to the emergency we face.
This is everybody's problem. Everybody has a role to take action. We are just a small group of people, but through our coming together, we have become a group bursting with ideas and enthusiasm. We believe that to respond to our emergency, the District Council and other organisations must harness the energy and enthusiasm of our people and our communities. We must all make a change for climate change. Your district needs you. We believe the solutions are out there already. We just need to make it happen. If we can't find the examples, then we must be those examples. The District Council and others must look for every opportunity to influence all who have a role in our district. We make this happen, and the frameworks must be in place to make sure there is accountability, named people, and monitoring, performance indicators, so that everybody can check progress. This is an emergency.
Hi everybody, it's Pete, one of the facilitators again. So I just want to explain really quickly how we did the voting process. So as Christina explained, the participants produced a set of recommendations after lots and lots of discussion. And then those recommendations, so all the recommendations that anybody made have been recorded, irrespective of how many people voted for them. So then after those final recommendations had been written, as you can see, the document on the screen there was sent to every single member of the inquiry. And each recommendation, people were asked to record whether or not they strongly supported, neither supported nor opposed, or strongly opposed each individual recommendation. And they were asked to explain in a few sentences why they'd voted in that way. We also asked them to choose their top 5 recommendations. So, which means we've got quite a lot of data now. We've got quite a lot of information on people's ideas about what should happen in response to the climate emergency. So all that information will be included in the final report. So you'll be able to spend endless hours ploughing through all that information and seeing what the inquiry members came up with. I would say that at the moment we're calling these this set of recommendations in terms of the prioritization provisional, because there's a couple of people that we haven't had their votes back from yet, but we'll get those and they'll be in the final version.
Okay, we're now going to hand over to Phil to start the brief overview of the recommendations.
Okay, so in the topic area of transport, what you see on this slide are headlines of the top 4 recommendations from the voting. So each one, when you come to the documentation, has got more details within it. And in the small discussion groups, we can go into a bit more of that detail, but I'll just run through the top level description of each one. So the top one in transport was to promote and encourage more people to take up cycling, partly through an improved connection or connected network of safe cycle routes, but also other ways as well. The second one was to make public buses more attractive as an alternative to cars, partly through a cheaper, higher quality service, but also some other ideas too as well. The third one is to encourage the take-up of electric vehicles through increased infrastructure across the district. And the fourth one is, it's really a sort of subsection of the second one. It's an idea to have really good quality apps and online live information about where vehicles are and journey planning when you want to use public transport to make the infrastructure that we have as easy to use and attractive as possible. Thank you.
Our recommendations for housing: every new house must be carbon neutral. And then Warwick District Council should refuse all future planning applications for new housing that is not carbon zero, and retrofitting of all public buildings and council-owned housing. And the last one is a team of independent advisors offering unbiased guidance on the retrofitting of private housing. And now our recommendation for communications, education and waste and recycling. The first one is a communications campaign to encourage everyone to take action. The next one is the council must regularly feedback to the inquiry and the wider public on the progress. The next one is encourage the reuse of items to reduce landfill. And last but not least, schools and other public premises should all have zero waste targets. Thank you.
Andrew, are you there?
I am here, yes. Thanks, Jenny. Thanks, Bea. Hi, everybody, I'm Andrew. So the last of our recommendations comes under the heading of finance and others. So first up, we are recommending as an inquiry that the council should try and develop a programme of natural carbon recapture on all of its available and feasible land. This could include the planting of things like trees, shrubs, flowers, grasses, and so on. Secondly, we'd very much like to investigate new ways to reduce the environmental effects of particularly commuting. The next one, number 3, was to look closely at financing options to help pay for the climate change measures. And finally, there was a big appetite amongst the inquiry members to establish an independent sustainability committee, which could include council departments, local organisations, and also businesses. And with that, I'd like to hand you back to Ignati for the next part.
Thank you. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, everyone. I hope that by now you have had a good idea of the processes we've been through to work on our recommendations. And indeed, you should have received a full list of recommendations in your emails, I'm told. So do check your inbox whilst you have time. We will have a short 10-minute break now. And in this break, if I could ask you to rename yourselves with placing two letters at the start of your name to indicate the first and second choice of the groups you would like to be part of. So now on your screen you have 4 themed discussion groups, A, B, C, and D. So if you could rename yourself, it is the 3 dots at the top right corner of your own video. And click rename there and just put A and C, for example, if you would like to be a member of transport and communications groups, or B and D, and then whatever name you have there. So you might want to turn off your cameras now, and please do keep it your microphone mute. Do have a short walk, replenish your tea, and we'll look forward to seeing you at 7 p.m. to go straight into small discussion groups and discuss our recommendations. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
As some of our facilitators said, all the interaction and communication in different groups was absolutely amazing to see. So thank you very much for your energy and contribution tonight. We really hope that this session will have answered most of your questions about our work and persuade that our recommendations do come from ordinary people living in this district upon receiving expert opinions. We have different viewpoints, as you've gathered, but we have reached a shared understanding. We now recognize we are in a climate emergency, and we urge all of you to join us in this realization. A few thanks. One is going to Warwick District Council for organizing this inquiry now that we have time to act and change certain ways to facilitate diversion of climate change. This work, the work of this inquiry, wouldn't have happened without very hard work of our facilitators. So Jenny, Sally, Jane, Peter, Caroline, thank you so much for what you've done with us over the past 10 weeks. And of course, we couldn't have formed our opinions without the input from experts, from the universities, not-for-profits, businesses, and the council itself. They all volunteered their time and energy to share their knowledge with us, and hopefully through our work, with the wider public. We would love people and organizations to support our recommendations and act upon them with as much ambition and with as much urgency as possible. So please, all the representatives of organizations here today, consider this your mandate. We trust that there is hope, and Warwick can be even more desirable and more pleasant place to live, but more importantly, that Warwick can lead the way for other districts and, who knows, maybe even for other countries to follow. The solutions are already there. We know it. We just need to make them happen. We encourage you to read the full list of our recommendations again carefully when you have time, maybe in the next few days, and consider what you, your family, your friends, as well as your organizations and your teams can do to make these recommendations come true. Action is needed now, real and structured action. Work in partnership, collaboration, not competition. This is everybody's problem. Everybody has a role to take action. And we believe that to respond to the climate emergency, the District Council and other organizations must harness the energy and enthusiasm of our people and our communities. We must all make a change for climate change. So thank you very much for tonight and goodbye.